So it's really that easy? Nesta asked, setting down the papers on the worn couch cushion. Gwyn, seated on the opposite end of the couch, stretched her feet toward the fire, robes rustling. It certainly seems easy, but according to everything I've read, it's not. This says, you just sit somewhere comfortable and quiet, close your eyes, breathe a whole lot, and let your mind go. I'm telling you, it took the Valkyries months to learn the basics, and mastering it required doing these exercises multiple times a day. But let's try it. It says at the end of this chapter that if we're doing this for the first time, we might grow sleepy, or even fall asleep during it. But learning to fight the urge to sleep is for further down the road. I could use a nap after today's training, Nesta muttered, and Gwyn chuckled her agreement. Nesta set her tea on the low table before the couch. All right, let's try it. I memorized the steps, so I'll lead us through it, Gwyn offered. Nesta snorted. Of course you did. Gwyn playfully smacked her on the shoulder. Learning is my job, you know. You'd have memorized this information anyway. Fair enough. Gwyn laughed, finishing her own tea and then sitting up straight. Get into a comfortable seated position, alert, but at ease. I don't even know what that means, Gwyn demonstrated, scooting until her spine touched the back cushions, feet flat on the floor, hands lightly resting on her knees. Nesta copied the position. Gwyn surveyed her, then nodded. Now, take 3 deep breaths. In through your nose for a count of 6, out through your mouth for a count of 6. After you finish the 3rd breath, close your eyes and keep breathing. Nesta obeyed. Inhaling and exhaling for that long required more concentration and effort than she expected. Her breathing was too loud to her ears. Each breath seemed out of sync with Gwyn's. Had she taken 2 breaths? Or 3? Or 4? I can feel you overthinking this, Gwyn murmured. Close your eyes and keep breathing. Take 5 breaths. Nesta did. Without anything to visually distract her, she figured her breathing would be easier to track. It wasn't. Somehow her mind just wanted to wander off. She told herself to focus on the count, on timing each breath and keeping a tally of how many she'd taken. And yet she found herself thinking of the couch cushions, her cooling tea, her still damp hair. How many breaths had it been? I think I'm losing my mind, Nesta muttered. Gwyn shushed her. Now, let your breathing steady and focus on the sounds around you. Acknowledge them, then let them fade away. Nesta did. To her left, she could make out shuffling feet and whispering robes. Who was walking through the stacks? What book were they? Focus. Let the sounds go. Someone was walking nearby. She marked it, and with an exhale, sent the thought floating away. To her right, Gwyn's breathing remained steady. Gwyn was probably good at this. Gwyn was good at everything, actually. It didn't irk her, though. For whatever reason, Nesta wanted to crow about her friend to anyone who'd listen. Her friend. That was what Gwyn was. It had been, focus, let go. Nesta noted Gwyn's breathing, released the thought, and moved on to the next sound, then the next. Now, survey your body, Gwyn said softly, starting at your head, slowly working down to your toes. Assess how you're feeling. If there are sore spots. Everything is sore after that sword lesson, Nesta hissed. Gwyn choked on another laugh. I mean it. Note if there are sore spots, if there are spots that feel good. Papers rustled. Oh, and the instructions also say that when you're done, You should assess how you are feeling. Don't dwell on it, but just acknowledge it. Nesta didn't particularly like the sound of the last bit, but she obeyed. Every part of her body ached, from a stiffness in her neck to a soreness along her left foot. She hadn't realized how many little pieces of herself existed, all constantly blaring their pains or status, how much noise it produced in her head. But she acknowledged each of those things, let them drift away. Assessing her emotions, however, how was she feeling? Right now? Tired, yet content to be here with Gwyn, laughing, doing this. If she went deeper, now we're going to work on focused breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Do 10 of them, then start over. If a thought pops up, acknowledge it, then send it on its way. Tell yourself, I am the rock against which the surf crashes. Your thoughts are the surf. Let them crash over you. Easy enough. It wasn't. The first few times Nesta counted 10 breaths, no thoughts plagued her at all. But when she began the next set, what would Elaine think to see Nesta here with a friend? The thought bubbled up from nowhere, as if opening her mind. It had rushed toward her. Would Elaine be pleased, or would she feel the need to warn Gwyn about Nesta's true self? She'd been on breath 5. No, 6. Wait, maybe it had only been 3. Start over if you lose count, Gwyn said, as if she heard the halt of Nesta's steady breathing. Nesta did so, focusing on the breaths and not Elaine. I acknowledge this thought about my sister, and I am letting it go. She was on her 7th breath when her sister appeared again, and yet somehow all you think of is what my trauma did to you. Had Elaine been right? Feyre had admitted she was guilty of it too, but Feyre hadn't known Elaine as Nesta did. Or it hadn't been that way before Elaine had chosen Feyre, before Amren had chosen Feyre, before... I acknowledge these thoughts, and I am letting them go. Nesta inhaled an 8th time. I am focusing on my breathing. These thoughts exist, and I am letting them pass me by. Nesta took another breath, forced her mind to think only of her breathing. When you finish your next set of 10, Gwyn said, near and yet far away, stop counting your breaths and just let your mind do as it wishes. We'll do that for a few heartbeats, then stop. The goal is to work up to longer and longer periods of this. Nesta did so, counting each of the 10 remaining breaths, feeling that moment of halting like a looming wave. She finished the 10th breath. Do as you want, mind. Go drift into those dark, horrible places. It didn't, though. Her mind lingered, didn't wander. It just sat there, contented, resting, like a cat curled at her feet, stilled. Only a few moments passed before Gwyn whispered, begin to sink back into your body. Mark the sounds around us. Mark the feeling in your fingers, your toes. Strange, so strange, to find her body suddenly calmed, distant, like she'd somehow indeed been able to step back, let it rest. And her mind. Open your eyes, Gwyn breathed. Nesta did, and for the first time in her life, she felt utterly settled into her own skin.